Continuing on with my X-Men reviews, I've been logging these, going back and reviewing them in correlation because we have X-Men 97 as well as Deadpool and Wolverine coming out this year. So it seems like a good time to go ahead and get reviews for all the X-Men films, the Wolverine films, and then the Deadpool films. I'm up to X-Men Apocalypse, and I do own this on DVD and Blu-ray. So that is how I got my audio description, which is done by Deluxe with narration by Aaron Meza. Aaron Meza. Just wanna sit on that for a second. I'm not gonna do anything with it, but I'm just gonna sit there with it, and we're just those who know. And we're gonna move on. So click subscribe because I like to talk about audio description. And let's just say Aaron reminds me a lot of someone else. I won't begrudge that. So X-Men Apocalypse, I've seen it before. I've actually seen it a couple times. I'm a big X-Men fan. Actually, Dark Phoenix, I think, is the only film that I've only seen one time. So the funny thing is, it's also the one I don't own. So I'm gonna probably watch that without audio description unless I bear down and buy it. But I didn't really like the film, so why would I buy it? This is cool. I think there's stuff here that I like, but if you dive too much into thinking, if you want to be a thinking man here on Bryan Singer's follow up to X-Men Days of Future Past, your brain's gonna hurt because it just doesn't make any sense. There's some stuff that happens when you watch it right after Days of Future Past, and you're like, what? So at the end of Days of Future Past, Wolverine talks to Charles and says, make sure you find us, bring us together, because we are, and gives him this like big speech about making Charles promise to find and form the X-Men, right? And but he ends up teleporting, and he's back in the like old OG timeline, and we see Famke Janssen and James Marsden is alive because Bryan Singer's back. So they get to actually reunite all these characters, and you see Anna Paquin as Rogue, and just like everybody's there, Iceman, and just everybody's having a good old time. And he turns to Charles, and Charles is like, I made a promise. We have a lot of catching up to do. So it all worked out. So this is still in the time period that it would be leading up to that. This is still in Charles's like recruitment phase. And it doesn't make any sense because so they just kind of like grabbed things, which is weird because it's Bryan Singer not really making sense of his own franchise. So, for example, Nightcrawler is here, played by Kodi Smit-McPhee. When they meet Nightcrawler in X2, they have no idea who he is. None. Nightcrawler has no idea who they are. There's no real definition given to that. There's just Nightcrawler is here. He's part, he was cage fighting, and they rescued him, and he's hanging out with the X-Men now. So he clearly knows who everybody is. He's met everybody now. They all know who he is. So it doesn't really mesh with the timeline anymore. Luckily, he's young enough that when you get up to the age of Alan Cumming, I guess, it'll be there eventually, which is fine because you see also these are young versions of, Aurora Monroe and Jean Grey and Cyclops, so that works out. you know, they'll age up into the roles, into the ages that they were for X-Men. What doesn't work for me is Angel being in this, because Ben Hardy's playing Angel. I don't think that rewriting Days of Future Past necessarily means that Angel is suddenly born like 30 years before he's supposed to be. You know, I don't think that I don't think that that's suddenly, because then his parents would be younger than they were, and there's just certain things that would need to happen in order for that to exist. And I know Angel wasn't like a huge part of X-Men Last Stand, and part of this whole thing was retconning X-Men Last Stand because Phoenix never needs to happen, and blah, 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 blah. I get it, I get it, I get it. So if X-Men Last Stand ever happened, it means Angel never really happened. It doesn't matter. Angel still was born during that certain time period. I mean, you can say that the events didn't happen, but Angel was still set up as a certain time period. And by the way, you don't really need Angel here. I know he's really tied to Apocalypse. Archangel, which, by the way, in the audio description, he's never called Archangel. He's always called Angel. So we have such a missed opportunity here. But the film turns him into Archangel, even does the tattoos and everything, and the body armor. He's got the metal wings. Isn't called Archangel. What? Anyway, which would have been cool, because at least it would have separated the characters a little bit, and then you could have tried to like bamboozle people who saw the other films and be like, this all makes sense. This is Archangel, this is a different dude. Even the comic book fans would be like, no, they're not a different dude, they're the same dude, fuck you. So there's that. I also have a problem with. But it's just like the little things like that, you know? Anyway, I love that we got lazy, so instead of Pietro, he's Peter Maximoff, Quicksilver. That's I love that. That's cool. We just Americanized the name. We're like, oh, Peter Maximoff. So yeah, everybody's back for this, basically. And actually, when I say everybody, I mean Lucas Till's actually doing something in this film. He actually serves a purpose in life. But the gang's back. Apocalypse is, we see him and his four horsemen, and he's being locked into, hopefully locked away forever at the beginning of the film, because they realize that what he does is dangerous and destructive, and he is pretty much known as being the most dangerous and destructive of all the X-Men villains. He has one of the strongest power sets. That's why they call it Age of Apocalypse. It has a lot to do with that. So, huge part of the X-Men timeline, with a lot of X-Men not surviving, and it's a great time to talk about Age of Apocalypse and X-Men 97, because when you merge these two things together, what X-Men 97 just pulled off along with Age of Apocalypse, when you really know what Age of Apocalypse is, the person they just killed off survived Age of Apocalypse. So I don't know what timeline we're in. Anyway, but this does not follow Age of Apocalypse. It's just kind of puts things together, throws them together, and puts them in there. And it's, I think when I looked this up when this originally came out, because I thought the Four Horsemen were weird, and I found out that Storm actually had been Four Horsemen at some point, as well as obviously notably Angel, and I think Magneto. I think Psylocke was the only one who had never been a horseman. Played by Olivia Munn here, which is cool. Everybody wanted to see Psylocke in a film. She's sort of underutilized, but I think Oscar Isaac is an interesting choice for Apocalypse. They don't do much with Apocalypse here, but it's funny because Apocalypse and all of the comic book series is sort of physically imposing because he's huge. And you don't really get that out of Oscar Isaac, but they just kind of made him look physically imposing. Um, and I, yeah, I think the film mostly works. I like how everything sort of weaves together. I like the return of Moira McTaggert, played by Rose Byrne. I think that works well for the series to bring her back. Um, Stryker is back for this. Uh, we get to have a Wolverine cameo because it's around that timeline where he's at Alkali Lake, and Jean uh, gives him some closure mentally. And I'm like, does this mess with the timeline? Like, what are we doing here? But also, it kind of makes his obsession with Jean feel a little bit creepy because he's obviously a lot. Actually, anybody who knows Wolverine knows he's a lot older anyway. But because he ages, part of his healing factor also slows his aging, so it's already creepy. Even with Famke Janssen, it's already weird. Um, they never speak his age, but it ain't hers. So I don't know. This is good. This is fine. But if you think about it too much, it doesn't make any sense. Coming out of Days of Future Past, Bryan Singer just, he spent all this time trying to get back into it, and then he couldn't even follow his own storylines, which is just weird. But I'm glad we're here, I guess, and it's cool to see some of the people in the mix. And the Quicksilver sequence here is cool, where he's running through the mansion and rescuing all the kids and pulling them all out. There really aren't any other cameos from any of the other random little X-Men characters from anything that I remember in that scene. I don't think I looked at anybody and went, oh, that's clearly that character. So I'm less concerned by that. There is one thing that I have to bring up, which is really tough because I really like Aaron Mesa as a narrator. I know you don't hear that name a lot. I know who it is. I really like him as a narrator, and this is really hard for me to say and to critique and to criticize. And I'm kind of beating a dead horse on this because I'm kind of exhausted of saying this within confines of X-Men films, and really just films in general. This whole not naming characters thing, like, we have to look at it holistically. If you're reading off the character's name at the end of the film, alongside if you're reading off the actor and the character at the end of the film, but you're not reading their name during the film, you're not helping. You got to realize that as blind people, we don't have facial recognition. Like, I can't look at somebody's face and be like, oh yeah, it's that guy who's always standing around in the background. There are films like that where there's like always a guy, and you're like, who's that guy? You can see them in the background because the director will set up a shot, right? That character may never get named, but it's really important that we know who that character is for whatever reason. And in films like this, they bother to throw in cameos of characters where they have characters that are set up with certain power sets and designs, and they're named, and they fully acknowledge who the character is. In X-Men First Class, we had Riptide. In X-Men Days of Future Past, I already talked about how, and bemoaned the fact that the audio description worked really hard to hide Magneto from us for whatever fucking reason. Man in Cloak, just like, come on now, like. Anyway, this one doesn't name Jubilee. She's just the friend. And I actually remember Lana Condor's performance in this. She's actually visible for quite a bit, and she's clearly looking like Jubilee. And the funny thing is, Jubilee is one of those names, sort of like Jean Grey, where even if you used her like non-mutant name and called her Jubilation, people would know who she was. So, But the thing is that Aaron actually ends up reading her name. Lana is given above the line here. And what I mean by that, in I'm extending it a little bit here. So what I mean by that is, after the credits, they always read. You always see the names of the people who play sort of the main characters in the film, right? The big names get read off. So you get James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Oscar Isaac, so on and so forth. And then it's before the executive producer, so on and so forth. And it's before the scroll. There's a couple of big names that they throw at you. Lana's in that. Lana's actually listed before Olivia Munn as Psylocke. So, and he reads it. He reads Lana Condor as Jubilee. But unfortunately, he never actually mentioned Jubilee being in the film. So it's weird, because then you're like, well, where was Jubilee? And who was Lana Condor? So at the end of the thing, you got to realize that you've been given a project. I don't know. I need to be in the room with these people sometimes, because it's like, if you were being asked to do a project where you're going to read off the credits and you're going to read off the actor and the character, and then you're also going to try to hold to some old dude standards of what audio description used to be, and then not name that character because you think that, like, I don't know, Jesus is going to hate you in the morning, whatever fucking reason you're coming up with, then you got to realize you're saying the name anyway. So who is this? If I'm not familiar with this, I'm going to be wondering, I'm going to be sitting there going, well, I just watched this movie. There wasn't a character named Jubilee. I don't know who that is. Who is this Lana Condor? Who did she play? What is this nonsense? They gave you the name. Use it. It's a lot easier to say Jubilee than it is to keep describing her as the friend, Anyway, yeah, I know this is like most of my review of X-Men Apocalypse right now, but I'm tired of it. I'm really exhausted by this. I'm really exhausted by characters who should clearly be getting named. These are not spoilers. It's not like when you find out it's Jubilee that it's like ruining the end of the film. And you're like, what? That was Jubilee? I found out way too early, and now I can't function, and the end of the film has been ruined for me. No, man, it's just Jubilee. She's dressed like Jubilee. She looks like Jubilee. I remember what she looks like in this film. They can't even talk about her character description very well, because if they did, it would be obvious it was Jubilee. She's known for wearing certain clothes. I don't know what else to tell you. It's disappointing. As much as I love Aaron, and their narration, like a hero of mine, yeah, this description just bothered me when I got to that, because I was like, damn it, we were doing so good. Everybody's getting named. You named Caliban. Like, we're knocking it out of the park here. Like, people were getting named left and right. And then we got to this, and it's just like, motherfuckers. Jubilee is where you drew the line. It's even different than in X2, where, she has less to do, which is funny because Storm actually does use her name in X2. So if there was existing audio description for X2, then I would be mad, because she actually says, when they're all in the cage, she's like, Jubilee, are you guys okay? So you actually do get the shout out to Jubilee. And I know that all of these old rules, all these fuddy-duddy rules, are based on not using, characters whose names are not used. I really want to see a film one time with somebody who never has any names for any characters, and just the madness of what that audio description would be like under these rules, where you have to physically describe every single character. And then I'd love for all of those characters to be almost exactly the same. but not. You know, so where they all fit the same character description. I would direct that movie just to drive someone slowly insane and be like, this is why you need names. They all have names in the credits. I just didn't use them during the script. They're all there. I gave it to you in the script. Recognizable actors that the audience would have been able to recognize with facial expressions. So what are you going to do for the blind audience? These are real questions that we should be asking, and we're not answering them. So anyway, I like X-Men Apocalypse. I don't think it's the strongest X-Men film, but I'm excited to see the use of some of the characters here. And it's, I don't know. I know we're not supposed to like Bryan Singer anymore, but these films are already made. You know, there's nothing I can do about that. So it is what it is. I'm gonna give X-Men Apocalypse a B+. I enjoy it. It's not as strong as some of the others. I think it's stronger than The Last Stand. That's about it. So, the Michael Fassbender stuff is great. He's fantastic in this film. I should have said that earlier, but I was so focused on other stuff. Yeah, Michael Fassbender in this film is just flawless. His work is fantastic in this film. So it elevates it in many ways, the stuff that he has to go through. This is what happens when you have a cast full of Oscar nominees. You know, you've got Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender. You've got down the line now Kodi Smit-McPhee ended up becoming an Oscar nominee. So yeah, there's quite a few. I'm sure at some point down the line we'll be able to call Oscar Isaac an Oscar nominee. He feels like he's somebody who's predestined for an Oscar nomination. Maybe James McAvoy at some point, but wouldn't be surprised if Rose Byrne got there either, to be totally honest. But Oscar Isaac feels like the glowing one, the one that's like, how is he not nominated yet? Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll watch something else. Actually, it'll be an X-Men film that I'll watch to coincide with X-Men. I'm not excited to see Dark Phoenix again, and it's not going to be with audio description because I'm going to watch it on Disney+. I don't want to buy it. I just don't want to own that film. I don't really want to acknowledge that it exists. It feels like people gave up on that film and they just released it. So, we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.